slow. I get nervous at the start, so if I get nervous, just laugh with me. We'll shake it off. Once I get rolling, I get passionate about it. This is our half acre in East Asheville. Today's is going to be what is permaculture. What I do it through my story and how I learned about it and the progress I took. But I'll veer off a few times and talk about what we think permaculture is. This is about 13 years in. We're about 15 years in now. To show we grow a lot of fruits, we grow a lot of produce, and we learn to prepare that in a lot of different ways over the years. Outside pizza up and pickling things. Yeah. We give classes now as well. We have tours. We do consultations. So I was talking about coming and visiting. It's one thing to see it on the film. We all know you come back from vacation, look at your pictures like, that's not what I saw. So to be immersed in it, walking through it and tasting things, smelling things. There's that nervousness. As we go through, please ask questions. I set it up in a slideshow, but we can stop as we go. And the big question we get is, what is permaculture? Originally, permaculture about 60 years ago now. Bill Mollison, David Holmgren. Don't do that. I was nervous enough already. Now you saw the whole slideshow. Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, they originated it. Really, it's getting lost to a lot of our ancestral ways, the way we operated in a food growing system. So as we say, two white Australian guys didn't figure this out 60 years ago. We're blessed them for putting it together, articulating it, and giving us ways to do it in our own gardening. So what is permaculture? Really, it's designing using these 12 principles. I'll do this, then I'll show another example of what I think permaculture is easy to explain. But by designing like this, we use care for the earth. For our primary central permaculture principles is going to be care for the earth, care for the people, make sure we have a fair share. So caring for the earth, making sure it's a little better every year in our backyard and our gardening wise. Caring for the people, we want to eat out of that. We got to get a return for our action. Fair share, a lot of that goes to insects. Returning that surplus into your system. Another example of what permaculture would be is, it's a blurry picture, but the edge of the forest. So I can say about the principles, I can say the design principles, I can say working with nature, I can talk about synchronicities, but really when you look at the edge of a forest, anywhere in the world, if it's not the Arctic or a desert, you're going to see the same patterns of plants. We'll talk about there's about seven layers of plants. When we look at the edge of the forest, I'm going to look like a wall to us in the beginning. So it's kind of not inviting. Once we break that down, and look at those layers, and we start to know the plants within that, and those layers and what they're doing and what their job is in that forest system, and we'll talk more about it as we get through these slides, it invites you into it. You start knowing those plants, having a relationship with them. Not to get too hippy-dippy with it, but you really do. You start appreciating each of those plants and what they do and their uses. So it's also a guild. We'll talk later how I talk about it being a guild. You see our yard, we've been doing it 15 years. I was talking to someone yesterday that came through. It was the first time I ever got at the end. She said, this is kind of, permaculture's too complicated for me. I realized I'm giving this talk today, I don't want to come across as too complicated. It can be as simple as Three Sisters Gardening. Is everyone familiar with that? So by having that corn come up, these plants are working in that symbiotic relationship. They're helping one another out. That corn is the trellis. The beans are going to fix that nitrogen, but using that trellis. The squash is going to cover that ground and help it out. So that symbiotic relationship between those. Practiced by the Iroquois since the 1300s. Providing fertility and health. Healthy diet from a single planting. All three crops. Corn planted in the center offers that support for the pole beans. The beans add nitrogen to the soil but provides further structure. And the squash cools the soil and hinders the weeds. I'd also argue all that. I'm going to do it early on. You want to know what the solution is to gardening? You want to put your hands together with me? That's where he starts getting weird and hit you up on stage. Organic matter, leave it in place. We've got to feed those microbes. We've got to feed that soil. These giant solar collectors, whatever size they are, they go out and they collect that sunshine all through the year, whether it's a perennial or annual. Puts half of that carbon into its body, into its soil. The other half is feeding those microbes around it. When it gets chopped and dropped, it feeds those microbes around it. So we've really learned to be clean, neat, and organized, and it's just the opposite of what a garden wants. When you look at my garden, I don't fertilize it anymore. I have ways I'll show you over the years. I use certain sprays. If I have problems, I use certain maintenance sprays. It's compost, there's compost teas and some extracts that go in it. But none of the sides, no insecticides, no pesticides, no fertilizer, no fungicide. By doing that through permaculture. Won't spend long on this, but I'm an organic gardener as well. Well, what are the differences? Higher yield in an organic garden. I'm going to have a whole bunch of one thing in one area, but I'm going to have a lot of more input into that area. I'm going to be fighting the bugs in that area. It all ripens at the same time, and it's a lot of work putting that food away. We still have that in a permaculture garden, but it's scattered throughout. Labor is mostly human labor. So in a permaculture garden, wider range of projects. We're using annuals and perennials. And we're using those 7 layers of food forest, giving us much production out of not just food, but fuel, recreation, and habitat. We talk about microclimates we get going on here, but I park my car, when I go in a parking lot and it's hot, what do you do? Look for the shade. We call it a microclimate. Same thing in our properties. We understand those microclimates, hot areas, cool areas, wet areas, dry areas, and plant accordingly. And using as many of those layers as we can. Water catchment in terms of the shape of my garden, of the garden. As we get into here, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. As you see, we collect all of our water. On this slide this morning, I was pretty proud of it. I got to go on the computer, I'm a Luddite, and I'm not good at this. This is my story. So from here, we'll say just how I did it. I started with lasagna gardening. I'm going to open up, I jumped in to have some first, ran with it. I'm not getting too deep into it. I had a tragedy in my life. I lost a brother to a murder. He was unarmed. The government let the murderer go. I really crashed out because of that. I just expected to go to prison. I go on and on about the things since then, but it just made me hit bottom. I honestly planned revenge. Anybody would. This is a little personal, but I planned revenge. Put my hands in the soil, started gardening, and it saved my life. It truly saved my life. I thought about his family, his mom, his brothers, what they would feel. He's a horrible person, deserves or not, it's not my judgment. His whole family would feel that. So this saved my life, and that's part of my jumping in so fast and so hard into this. So we'll tell the story as we get going. Not the murder, but me jumping in like I did. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any money. I couldn't work. I was mad at the world. But all this, so we all have time, energy, and money. More or less of one of those for sure. So I had all this time, all this energy, but no money because I couldn't work. So I jumped into my girlfriend's backyard, started growing this food. And doing that, I was able to layer these things up. So where was I going to get soil from? I'm going to go buy a bunch of bags of potting soil. I'm going to do it for permaculture, all these different things. I didn't know what to do with it. There was no way I could afford all that soil. So I did this layer gardening. Jeff Lawton, I looked up Jeff Lawton and I did layer gardening. I layered up put cardboard down, put leaves and straw and wood chips, all layered up to about 2 to 3 feet tall. I wish I could go back to that and talk about it a little bit. I get so nervous. Here we go. Shake it off. So layering it up, going 3 feet deep with it. It cooks down in place. We go with browns and greens. So greens are our nitrogen, browns are our carbon. Make sure it's wetted in between. We do that in layers as we go up, and it's just like composting, but composting in place. When I did that, I was new to this. I was doing aquaponics at the time. I raised tilapia. These are things that I heard about when I was studying gardening, and I was like, I don't know, it can't be that easy. Fish poop grows food. You layer up organic matter, it breaks down and grows food. It can't be that. So I tried them, and it worked. It just fascinated me. So this is the one I layered up the first year. Put the compost on top, planted seeds into it. It was just amazing that first year. I wasn't a gardener. I had never grown anything, so I didn't even know. I laughed about the yard as I did it, because the first year when I tore these out, put swales, then we'll see it all. Every plant that came up, I was like, what do I do? Do I kill it? I just don't know, because it was all new to me. So in this first year, I grew a tremendous amount of greens. I grew quite a few tomatoes in there, some cucumbers. The biggest thing that shocked me was at the end of the year, what I started with wasn't there anymore. I could make out the straw in there, the wood chips, but I had this gorgeous soil. And I've read it other places since, but I thought I discovered it. Nature creates no waste. Waste is a human concept. So we're going to talk about the permaculture principles in a minute, and that's one of them, creating no waste. From there, it worked so well, I started studying. We talked about hugelkultur on my whole backyard. We look at it, it'll be 23 or so swales that all catch the water. And behind every one of those swales is a hugelkultur. So what it is actually a giant sponge sitting behind that. So these swales catch the water, and then it just gets sucked up behind it. So even in extreme drought like we are now, all my plants do fine. I used to have this big ego, and I don't water anything, I don't need to, I've got these swales. Now when it's this dry, I go ahead and I water a little bit anyways, but you kind of have to. But the trees, the perennials, we do fine without it. I multiple use it. We're in 15 years in now, so we're at that point, everything's broken down. You'll see pictures here coming up where you can't even recognize the logs that went in there. I won't talk about hugelter too much now, I will later on, but just thinking of the size of the materials that goes in there, the smaller the better. If you're going with large logs, we'll talk about compost. Compost is going to be 35 to 40 parts carbon and 1 part nitrogen as you build it up. And that's what you're looking for. We can talk about how much in each part, and doing a 2/3 rule, 2 browns, 1 green. Same thing with these logs. If a log's 6 inches or larger, there's going to be a lot of carbon in the center of it, and not as much nitrogen in that cambium layer. So it actually steals carbon or steals nitrogen from the soil around it. It's only for the first year or two, but if you put big logs in there, you want to plant a lot of things like peas and beans and nitrogen-fixing trees if you want to get that nitrogen in the soil. Good.
Does it matter what kind of tree?
Yes and no. I wouldn't pick a whole bunch of pine and do it in one area because it's going to make it acidic. If you're doing blueberries there, it's probably all right. I wouldn't do a bunch of locusts in one area because it just breaks down too hard. I wouldn't do a bunch of or black locusts in there because of the black walnut because of the juggalones that are in it. But if I had wood chips of all of that mixed together or logs of all that mixed together, diversity is the spice of life. One breaks down faster than the other, one creates certain kinds of microbes in there and causes certain bacteria. I keep going on soil, stop me. I'll take us for an hour on soil, about bacteria and fungi and protozoa and how it all works together. It's fascinating what happens in that hugelter pile. So the more diversity that's in there, the more diversity we're inviting in there.
And it can be freshly cut?
Freshly cut's even better. There's more of that nitrogen around the cambium layer, so it's fresh in there. When you get into mushrooms, we'll talk more about it. That should be fresh. You should wait a couple weeks on that.
I have a question. I'm kind of a new gardener, but we have a new house and I'm learning what's weeds and what's not. And things that are putting out flowers and seeds now that you don't want to be, that are kind of waste, that you don't want to be propagating all over the place because you're trying to eradicate them, is there still a good use for putting them into,
Absolutely.
you know, this kind of a swale or something to use what's usable but not propagate?
The plants themselves, or you mean the flowers and the material from it?
Whenever I pull up weeds, I
Perfect
just,
for it.
pardon?
Perfect to do that with it.
Okay.
Mix that in there. If it's gone to seed already,
Okay.
then I would compost it first. I would make sure to get a good hot compost or buy worms from someone. Make sure the worms have cleared the system to make sure that to make sure that it breaks down those seeds. And we'll talk about that in composting as well. But
Okay.
that works great for it. And the weeds themselves, we'll talk about that as well. I have a three-tier weed system. One would be like the ivy stuff that I definitely don't want there. So in the first couple of years, I would really go after those hard, and it's kind of easy to maintain them after that. Second category would be like wild asters. They have a beautiful flower, they're nice, they call on all kinds of pollinators, they look great all over the place, but the root system's pretty strong and they're hard to pull out. You gotta get your hori knife out and they go deep and spread. So something like that, I leave that, let it go to flower, but I'm always walking around my garden. We'll talk about zones shortly. Walking through the zones, and if I see it coming up, next day I see it starting to flower, it's open flower, then I go ahead and pinch its head off so it doesn't go to seed, but it's all right there. You do that and more flowers come out of it. If I miss one of those for a couple of years, it goes into that type 1 because there's just too many of them. Then there's type 3, amaranth, lamb's quarter, sorrel, it's kind of the base plant, chickweed. There's a few others I'm trying to think of that. I let those go to seed. I shake those seeds all over the place because bare ground is horrible. It's just releasing that moisture to the air, killing the microbes that are getting too hot. So instead I have it covered with violets and chickweeds all over my garden. My whole yard is like that wherever I'm not growing. This stuff's pretty easy to pull out. It's very edible and it feeds a diversity of species out there. If we really get into the soil part, we're not going to go too deep, but what's happening with each one of those plants, rather than being a bare spot, that plant is a farmer. We'll look at a tree size. Should I do this? We'll do it real quick. I'm going to try to talk fast. But a tree's a farmer. When a tree goes out, that's what we talk about not breaking that fungal connection. That tree actually works with fungi. So there's not the decomposing type of fungi, but there's arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. And that fungi makes a connection with the plant root. So when we till, we've gotten rid of that and messed it up already. But already those plants go out, they put their roots into the soil. Part of that carbon they put back into the soil. Dr. Elaine Ingham, bless her heart, just passed away. She talked about cakes and cookies. That tree's collecting carbon and sugar, putting slow into the soil. It's cakes and cookies it's putting in. If it needs molybdenum or nitrogen, whatever one of the 17 micronutrients it needs, it puts a little special into that cookie, and it feeds this fungus. This fungus has come in, this arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, and has either penetrated an endo or an ecto or made a sheath around a root, gone in between the cells and actually connected to that plant. Then there's a symbiotic relationship. This is fascinating stuff, and I offer books at the end to read about it, or videos to watch. It feeds into that fungus, those exudates, those enzymes it's putting out, and it feeds that fungus in return for hooking up to it. It takes part of those enzymes, goes out, and feeds that certain bacteria that's feeding on that certain micronutrient and calls it into it. It sucks it into this fungal unit, into this hyphae, gets pulled back into the plant, and the plant starts breaking it down. It does that, it's making plant available nutrient. Right before that little teeny bacteria is dead, it spits it back out, and that's those tiny little root hairs we see. That bacteria, this tiny little 10,000 foot head of a needle, goes back onto the soil, starts collecting that nutrient again. It gets sucked back in, the whole process within 2 days. It's fascinating, but that's happening a million times a second. So that tree is actually farming the nutrients it needs. How to get into that? I was going somewhere with it.
Using weeds as compost.
Yeah, that's what it was. So weeds. So think of that tree, but that's also the blade of grass or those weeds. The more of those plants we have in there, cycling that nutrient, cycling that nutrient, cycling that nutrient. Once we don't need them, pull them out of the way. But then we take what's left on top and that compost in place. We build a tremendous amount of soil that way. Swales. I do a lot of swales. If you're familiar with swales, we have interconnected 22 swales, and we went through Helene. I just assumed we've got so much water, so much destruction just above the Swananoa River. And I woke up and I just expected that we'd be seeing destroyed. Actually, I lost one wall, and that was all. One rock wall tumbled, and that was it. There's just dry stack stones, you see. Everything was fine. I've got videos of it at the bottom of this sloped lot. There was water about that steep going for a day and a half into the bottom pond, and it has multiple redundancy in my drains from it, and a little tiny house behind us, so everything was fine. But the water was clear. There was no debris in the water. It wasn't muddy. It had a tannin color to it like it'd be in a forest. We have so much microbial activity. Each one of these swales and ponds we're going to see is slowing, spreading, and sinking that water. Eventually they were full, but they have low spots. The wind flows over one spot. It just worked incredibly well. So swales, when done right and done in the right areas, it's not sometimes in permaculture we think, I want that because I like it. Really see if it fits to your situation. My mom lives up north. She lives on bedrock that's 3 feet under the soil. If you do that there, you're asking for flooding. There's nowhere for that water to go. So know what you're working with. It's not just a carbon copy of wherever you're at. In our soil type, and our mountains being sloped, it just works well. No, not again. It works really well. There you saw all my swales in my ponds. I think that's the next one. So yeah, there's a swale. So I put in these swales. I better hurry up because I'm just doing this first part. I put in these swales. I dropped down some trees that were dead in the property. I put walkways through these swales. I buried the stuff behind them, made hugel mounds. I did ponds in between. We joke about this. I was going through recovery. My brother was still in a horrible place. My wife came home from work. I had this pond dug with a pair of Waldies on. She went, "What did you do?" There it is down there. So I had a couple of pine trees drop. There's the pond at the bottom. A couple of first hugel cultures in. This was a solar kiln. I had a greenhouse I'd done. I was doing aquaponics here, just trying all these different things. I had a furniture business and was drying lumber, milling my own lumber. This stuff was all coming to me, just how much availability there was out there in these waste resources that we look at and we find when we bring them in. But those swales, those ponds, there's a hugel culture looking inside of one when I started, putting all those logs in there. There's the down tree that we had. I built a well out for that apple tree. I covered them up with soil. I mulched them. I planted them. This is year 2. There's so many things in this picture. I'll talk all day about it. But as I was learning these things, I was trying to find ways. This is a hot water solar collector that went into the aquaponics to heat the tilapia's water. Behind it was a 10 by 10 compost that ran a bunch of black tube through it, turned on for 15 minutes, and added hot water to it. That was the solar kiln I was talking about. I dried food in and lumber in. That was the chicken's house, so we moved around to fertilize that area. But these swales started coming in. We started building this up. I planted it in the first year. I'd never gardened before. I went out and bought a bunch of plant starts, plugged them in the ground. They worked great. I was really impressed. We did onions, we did garlic, we did with greens throughout the year. We just had really good success.
How did you get those logs there? Did you physically move them yourself?
Actually, I had them, the tree company came and I got money off. If he didn't end up moving, he could just drop the big trees, so he dropped them right in a row. I rolled them around a little bit, put them, PV'd them where I needed them. Took a big PV and rolled them. I burned with wood, so the stuff that was in between size I used for wood. The smaller stuff I put inside, and the big logs I used for backing.
Gotcha.
Some of those are still there today. The larger ones you can see back. There's aquaponic greenhouse in the background. We started getting tomatoes. Got root crops and beans. I was brand new to gardening. I'd never done all this. So first lettuce and tomato I grew. Great, I have a salad. Then what do I do? You gardeners, you know the first time you start growing things, what do I do with all this abundance? I don't know. But the yard had changed. We were actually 2 years in. I was a year and a half in. I put these swales in. I had taken out every plant I knew. I didn't know what plants were coming up. Do I kill it? Don't I kill it? I all of a sudden got this feeling of, this isn't my house. It's my wife's house, girlfriend's house at the time. Whoa, what have I done? The neighbors are talking, asking if I got permits. What if I'm not here in a year? Something happens to me in the house. It's her mortgage. She's stuck. I just got this hair on me. She hasn't married. I think about it. I got this. Have I messed up? So a friend, I got talking with a friend. He said, "There's out of Earth Haven. There's a permaculture design course. Go sign yourself up for that." So I did. I went and met some just beautiful people. I went out and met some beautiful people, friends for life. We sat down. It was one of the coldest. It was 2014, one of the coldest winters we've had here since I've been here. And I learned to design. These designs are up here if you want to look through them. The big thing I learned was, after I took my design, was that's not the design. Anything's going to evolve. This worked better than I thought. This didn't work as good as I thought. I like this here. I didn't like this here. One example, I'll use only just this one, is these mushrooms. The entrance to our house is here. The walk into the yard is here. Everything is done over in here. So we're going to talk about zones in a minute. This is kind of a zone 3, and I'm never in right next to the house. I had shade from the big oak tree that's there. I had a pond there. Everything that mushrooms needed was there. So in the design, I put it there. And then the mushrooms would show up, they'd flower, and they'd go away, and I'd never see them, and I'd never use them. They weren't close enough, so I put them in my zone 1. Now all the mushrooms are over here. I pull in the driveway and look over, oh, those mushrooms are fruiting. Somewhere where you're going to see them all the time. So the design changes. It evolves. I'm just going to read through these. A lot of them are interconnected. We did them before. These are the 12 design principles around the earth care, people care, and fair share. Observe and interact. If you're going to do a design and you're going to put a bunch of expensive trees in, you're going to do a bunch of earthworks, really getting into a big permaculture design, you're better off observing it for a year. What's that sun's path in the winter? What's that sun's path in the summer? Where do I have wind coming in? What are the outside noises and problems coming in? What do I want to design against? What do I want to design for? What's going to work where? So really put the time in. You can start accumulating plants and doing garden beds, getting soil, doing things like that, but as far as a big design, really put your time in. I didn't do that, so I learned from experience. I jumped right in and did everything right off the bat, and so it's been an evolving plan. But my teacher joked, 90% observation makes for 10% effort. 60-40 at best. I get so excited, I get inside, watching something go, and I gotta go, and you make those mistakes, and you really learn. How are we doing on time? I might just keep going rather than reading through. I'll read through them real quick, just so we have them. Observe and interact. Catch and store energy. That's really the big one for me. Attaining a yield. Apply self-regulation, accept feedback. I think that's bad habit for all of us. It's just the way it is. I use one example for that. I put black raspberries all down through a walkway. I put them all over. I love them. The wild black raspberries. They're just so good. And so along the fence down to our tiny house in the back, through the garden beds, everywhere you can see on any fence. And my friend Yara was walking through, was getting caught by it, He's like, why would you put those in a walkway? Shut your mouth. My favorite berry. How dare you? He was wrong. He was 100% wrong. I argued you're wrong. This is my favorite berry. Every day I walk by, they grab, there's no more blackberries. Accept feedback. Use and value renewable resources. This one is another, all these are good. This is my favorite one, but there's so much around us. The wood chips, the organic matter, the humiculture, we start doing these things, it just starts really piling up. I have a composting business now. A lot of this, you're going to see wood chips. I say put wood chips down, they're great mulch, they're great for covering areas to get the soil covered. So I tell people if you need them, you can do chip drop, and even an easier way is when you hear that chipper in the air, I get on my bike and I ride over. What are you going to do with those? You got any place? They usually bring them for free. I joke I don't have to do that now. I start riding my bike over. I'm like, oh, here comes George. It's gotten even better than that. Now I get a phone call while I'm gone. Hey, we got wood chips. You want them? I'm like, well, my whole yard's full of good piles. So it's nice, but it's a resource. I have a composting business. So use of our renewable resources, produce no waste. There's both of those. Design from patterns to details. So when we're looking at it, we might know my first designs here, you'll see shape of trees, 25-foot diameters, maybe an apple, maybe a pear, maybe an Asian pear. We're not really figuring out what it is. That's the next stage of the design. So design for patterns, where the water is going to be, where those outside elements are. Down to, I'm going to have a gold rush apple here with 3 types of grafts on it, these grafts, and the layers are going to be this with them, and that takes time to get to. So designing from patterns to details. I'm talking too much.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
What do you do about moles and voles or any kind of like mammal pests?
We work with nature, not against it. Some of it will be Caro seeds or Caro oil put in the hole. Caro?
Castor.
Castor, thank you, I knew that wouldn't sound right, castor, yep.
Okay.
But I do have a big problem with them, so what I did learn is do not put your trees in the hugel. You go below the hugel with big trees with such a root system. We didn't really have a problem with voles for years, but we had moles. Moles are the meat eaters, and voles are the vegetarians. So mole, meat eater, vole, vegetarian, eats the roots. Well, the moles come in, put the holes there, then the voles come and use those holes. And so I had a few trees that started jiggling on me when they're in there. The bushes usually recover, all the other plants recover from it, but the larger trees, you can lose them from it. So I don't do much about them. I kind of let nature take its course, but we have had problems with them, but eventually it's just such a diversity within there. I'll talk about a gummy berry, and I'll show you in a little bit how much we get from them when we get to it. But we get so much from it. I was making a video, and my mom said in the video you sounded happy the birds were taking your gummy berries, because there was the cedar waxwing come in such flocks in the fall. And they're sitting in the oak trees above. It reminded me of hearing the stories of the hickories and the chestnuts with the branches being weighted down with them, because there's so many, but it wasn't that, but it was hundreds of them in the tree above, and 10 at a time come in, 10 would leave, and they're sitting there dominating my tree. She said, you sounded happy they're getting your berries. I get so many. And 2 weeks later, there's one above it that's going to flower or finish fruiting. Down below it, there's another variety that just got done fruiting. I've already gotten a whole bunch from it. And to see that much it just warms your heart to see that you're getting it closer to the way it should be.
Gotcha.
And I'm not going on about the way anyone does anything, but we see it. We're gardeners. We see in our garden there's this little paradise of communal activity happening. Insects to bugs, to birds, to bees, to bears, to voles, to foxes. And you have to deal with those. We'll talk about it. I'm going to keep going. Integrate rather than segregate. Small and slow solutions. Use and value diversity. Use edges and value the marginal. Creatively use and respond to change. These are just the principles that we use as we're designing and as we're adjusting that design. We keep these in mind when we're designing. It sounded kind of simple to me in the beginning, but now I fall back on them so much. So this is zones. We also design with zones. These are things I learned in that class. When I got that feeling of, whoa, what am I doing? Once we really learned there was a system to this. So using those principles to design, but also designing these zones. Concentric circles going out from ourself being zone 0, our house, the kitchen garden, small area, you're going to be at least twice a day, semi-intensively cultivated, larger fruit and nut trees, pasture, crash crops, minimal care, might go wild food gathering, out to what we see very little anywhere, and that's a wild, untouched forest, old growth forest. But they don't really look that way. In your yard, they're going to look something like this. Like I said, my zone 3 was touching this side of my house because I just was never there. So thinking of, rather than calling it zones, we call it patterns of use. What are the patterns of use in your yard and your garden? I came in, I didn't see those mushrooms, so I put in my pattern of use. I was there every day to see mushrooms. In mine, we'll talk about it, but let me chickens and ducks out every day, so it's a zone 1 garden. We'll wait till we see that and talk more about it. So the 7 layers in all my plantings in the backyard. And again, I don't want any of this to confuse or dissuade you. If you're an annual gardener, like that's just too much. A permaculture thinking is just connecting those dots. Maybe it's your garden bed, you're not doing much with them, but on the edge of it, you're doing some blueberries and a dwarf fruit tree and some medicinal flowers around it. All those things will have a lot going on. It doesn't have to be full-fledged on. But when you do go full-fledged and you want to do a design, we're going to have these 7 layers I talked about. Anywhere around the world, we're going to see those 7 layers. If I go to New Zealand and I see a tree that's kind of thorny, a certain height, that has a certain leaf that looks like a pea plant, I'm like, oh, that's a nitrogen fixer. Just like the locust. We see those patterns in nature. We talk about patterns. Patterns in nature. Those leaf patterns, it might be a nitrogen fixer. I'm not going too much about that. I'll just confuse people. We'll see those patterns in nature. So the layers are, there's going to be ground covers. There's going to be rooting crops. There's going to be a herbaceous layer. There's going to be a shrub layer, fruiting tree layer, and a nut tree layer, and the climbing layer. And we'll see that pattern, like I said, anywhere around the world, we'll see those similar plants. Some plants are, is that too much money to show them? There's that picture again of our, this is early on in ours, about 2-3 years in. Yes, we have an apple tree, an Asian pear, but coming down we have elderberries, gummy berries, service berries, a small fig, a bush hazelnut, raspberries, currants, sunchokes, daylilies, blackberries, and that next layer down to the herbs, the horseradish, down to the ground covers like clover and strawberries. We do that using plants, animals, and fungi. I'm proud of those 3. Plants, animals, and fungi work in that symbiotic relationship though. So the fungi are the decomposers of the forest, but they're also transferring those nutrients like I was talking about in that fungal relationship. in the process of decomposing the forest, we're going to make a bunch of food out of it. So, succession. We do succession within our food forest. In the guild I'm going to talk about, I'll show, I have succession within my plants from in to out. So the first flowers, the irises and the lilies, flower first. Then I go out to more of the succulents out front, maybe finish with the black-eyed Susans out there. So as it flowers, nothing's getting buried on the inside. But also my nitrogen fixers and the time that they flower. So I'm getting what's called a silverberry late in the fall, and it flowers first thing and sets fruit first thing in the spring. And then comes the gummy berry. As it's flowering, you're walking by going, oh, what is that? So are the bees, so are all the pollinators, so all the beneficial insects. That one sets fruit. Next comes an autumn olive, but a non-invasive autumn olive. So that's doing the same thing. So having that succession within the flowering time with them, succession through the years to make sure that that guild's designed so it allowed to be its full self. I'd done so much of my property when I'd taken my PDC. I was a year and a half in and done a lot. So my teacher would say things like, anybody plant a fruit tree? Anybody plant them too close together? I did. Understanding that size where everything's going to go within that guild. Some of the plants are fixing nitrogen. So they're pulling nutrients out of the soil. This is some nodes I have on an Austrian winter pea that I pulled up, just to show that symbiotic relationship, that plant is working with those bacteria and having these sacs on its root system and passing that nitrogen back on. So we'll have that. When we use, I talked about the plants being their own farm. So even if we're really organic minded and we want to do the best, and so to fertilize those plants, we're going to get the best organic fertilizer there is out there. And we're watering that plant, but that plant's going to do wonderful. But when we stop using that, it's not going to do wonderful, because what we've done is we've gotten rid of that middleman. That nutrient's right in that water, and it's going through osmosis through those plant roots into that plant. Those bacteria, those fungi, those protozoa, those nematodes, those microarthropods don't have to be there anymore. They're not being fed. And that's what we say when we're feeding the soil, is we're feeding those members. And what they're pooping out and what they're digesting and getting rid of and then eating the next member is what's making that plant available nutrient. So cycling of that nutrient happens. And if we get rid of those people that do that by having it in liquid form, they're not going to be there. So we're doing the same thing. It's not as bad as using fossil fuels-based fertilizers and insecticides and pesticides, but we're still creating a less fertile soil in the process. We can create a water only. So nitrogen-fixing plants like this, like clover or that. Here there's a lot going on. It's not a great picture, but this is comfrey. Is anyone familiar with comfrey? Yeah. Has that great big taproot that's down to those minerals and nutrients that are deep in the soil, accesses them, pulls it to its leaves, and we chop and drop that in place. By the bees, they're fixing the nitrogen. I do stone walls in the front of my hugel beds. They collect that heat and grow strawberries along them. So catching and storing that energy any way we can, creating a microclimate, extending the season. Some of the plants are just calling the pollinators beneficial. There's a bee on that, you can't see it. That's the comfrey again. Many of them have multiple uses. The comfrey is a bone knit, calls in the pollinators, chop and drop it, so it's a nutrient-rich. I chop mine 5 to 6 times a year, so that great big mass, and I chop and drop it in place or put it in the compost 5 6 times a year. What a wonderful plant. And then bush cherries, I just love this because the shot going up through. Some of them are great for us and all the birds. So when we get surplus like that, there's multiple of these trees around the property. When that flock of birds comes, you don't mind it as much. You're losing some, but you've got the surplus. We'll see as we get going more through these pictures. Integrating our animals. Having ducks and chickens and understanding the differences between them and how we raise them. When we raised bees for a while, I go on with stories about bees all day, so how fascinating they picked up on your energy around them. They'd be either calm. If you weren't calm, they weren't calm. They'd give you warnings. Learning to raise the ducks. This was a big one for us. That's our little dog Lucy. She passed on now. But at first, we were going to get chickens. After 2-3 years, don't lay as well, so then they become meat. You move on. I was going to be a farmer. And then that one was Sarah. And Cabango liked sweets. And Patty was the protector of the flock. So instead, I was retired on our house, and they got old there, and they were buried there. I hope this doesn't offend anybody. We talk about menopause. We see chickens get old. Once they stop laying, they actually start making a chicken laying noise. They have the bears in the yard, their groundhogs out, and I laid an egg and make different noises. But the chicken laying egg, after they've gone through menopause, they come out, they do a little bit louder, and you always notice, I know you got a green egg, that's not in there. But they retire happy there. The ducks were different for us. The ducks weren't like raising the chickens. In the beginning, we were going to change the chickens over, same with the ducks, we found out, we'll bring them into the house, hatch the eggs. First week, they're in the kitchen sink. Oh, that's cute. They're really cute. Second week, they're in the bathtub. They're a wild animal, not like a chicken. They actually grow really fast to keep in the flock. Week 2, they weren't even be in the bathtub anymore. They're dead. Ducks have webbed feet. They're slug patrol. Bill Mouse in the beginning. Digress a little bit. He said there's a story about him, and he says, "Madame, you do not have a slug problem. You have a duck deficiency. Ducks love slugs." So that web feet, I use them in my garden. I'll talk about beef and duck in a minute. I'll go into the garden. I think I work for them. I let them in the garden twice a day. And I read they don't bother plant material. So great. I got to go to work this week. They don't fit in the bathtub anymore. Into the greenhouse with all the fresh veggies, all the fresh greens in there. I came home from work and opened that door. Decimated. If that's all they have, and they're not a big garden, and they're little teeny ducks all day long, they're going to squish it. A lot of it pop back. But they don't eat many greens as long as and everything's developed. But what's you going to use? I put a few pictures of snakes in there because the first time we got the big black snake, I like snakes, don't mind them. There's a church next door. I carried them all the way to the back of the church and over past their parking lot and put it in the woods. A couple more times down the bottom of our property. After that, he started living in the front of our greenhouse. I take him to the front door and drop him off. You just get to know him. If I have that snake, he eats a few eggs a year, but we don't have any venomous snakes there. He's going to keep them away. We don't have any rodents there. He keeps them away. We're working with nature, finding that way for everything we can, that first slide between organic gardening and permaculture. Every job I can give away to someone else or something else in the system is a job I don't have to do. Chickens, sometimes I use chickens, for example, permaculture. Because permaculture could be as simply as finding 3 purposes for anything in your design. So thinking of the chicken, it's food, the eggs, or the meat if you decide. But it's also out there kicking and scratching, eating insects all day. I have no fleas or ticks on my property. But it's also pooping what's out there doing that. I also pick them up, pet them, their companionship. We want to put that in the 4th use. So chicken would be a good way. So plants, animals, and fungi. Once we get to know the fungi, which ones are working for us, what they're used for. You know what they say about mushrooms. You can eat any mushroom once. You don't know which ones we can eat, which ones we can't. I don't know how that guy does some more nodules on that plant. I'm bringing in all those beneficials. Get to see the monarchs in my yard. It's just such a special thing. More of the snakes because he's so cool. Hang out with the ducks and the chickens and the dog. There it is, making an egg. If it's that far, I sometimes let them have it. Sometimes I get it back. Sometimes I just pick up the egg in them and set them out and set it outside. But one more to show my wife doing it. Show we both do it. First time she did it, she was so scared. Now she'll reach out there and grab that snake. Oh, get over here! The black bears, that's above our house. We get them all the time. We have a tiny house down there. We're right on the parkway, or off the parkway, and the Mountain Sea Trail. They're there all the time. They lay down on my stinging nettles, mountain tree cubs, or the juveniles. They rip a branch out of a fruit tree here and there. They do cause problems, it's frustrating, but it's what a treat to sit in your yard and hang out with bear cubs over your house, talking to you, talking to them. Actually, I talk to them every year, and I don't see it as dangerous. Don't think I'm being that way, but I got so used to it. My chickens are on the tree. I'll tell the chickens. I'll talk to her and do it. She'll get so mad she'll snap her teeth at you. You just talk to her. You don't go towards her or cubs, but they're not going to. You get your chickens. You're on them. Put them away. You talk to her the whole time. She's used to your voice. Just deal with those animals. But they're very not friendly, but they're not a brown bear. They're not going to kill you. If you go towards the cubs, they will. My first experience. I'm digressing again. First year I was here, I'm an elk hunter. I got my hunting rifle. I took my 3 dogs. We walked along the woods where I live. The church next door is talking about. There's a valley. And all of a sudden, 2 bear cubs ran up a tree side by side. Oh, how neat! Bear cubs are supposed to be moms. So I went out with the dogs to get back. One of my dogs is deaf. 2 dogs get back. One dog keeps sniffing down. So I didn't see there was autumn olive in front of me. I went to grab my dog, and Mom was right behind it. She ran through hopped through that bush twice. Bear stands up talking about it. And came at me and they say, "Look big, or lay down and play dead." I grabbed my dog, threw this poor old dog, and went, "No, no, 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 no." I was a hunter. First thing I was like, I love bears, but that's too close to the house. They're in the city. I was going to get my gun. I got to get that bear. That's a bear. You can. To now, I love the bears. Actually, this is 15 years later. We absolutely love them. They're part of it. I don't love it when they rip a branch off an apple tree and it stinks, but nothing too horrible. And fungi, we get a lot of fungi that we eat. That's just a picture of the backyard. So, where are we going from here? I've lost track. So this just showed up on one of our oak trees, the lion's mane. We have them out front where we plugged them. What a wonderful, beautiful nature. Once we identify these things, we know them. We see stuff all around us. Nature just produces. So this is after we planted it. So we use these principles. We did the design. We started putting in these fruit trees. You see this was tagged. It's a pear that's there. And it's one of those things where you learn about it. If it starts going the wrong way, you're going to start making excuses, but it just took off for us the first few years. The way it was just so lush, so green, so thick, so dense, produced so much food. We did a wattle and daub. These are the swales above it here. And these swales, I should explain how we built so much soil doing it. Through the next couple of years, it just became a little wild, as my wife called it, but we just let things go. And again, all those enzymes and activity, when I look at the soil that we built for doing this, it's just incredible how fast it went from that dark clay that we start with. That's maybe year 3 or 4. So at this point, we're starting to get a lot of these perennials and the apple trees and the berry bushes starting to really fill in. The annual garden is still dominating, but we'll look, I had observed my property. I'm on a triangle lot, you can see on the map here, and I've got great big oak trees to my east and great big oak trees to my west, but a little notch in the trees you can see. There's a gap, a little notch there, so I had to look at that sun, where it went, and I put all my fruit trees right across this part of my property. Down here is always in the shade. This is the height of the day, so you can't see it. Right here is always in the shade, and up at the house is always in the shade. So I planned where each one of those fruit trees is going to go. Normally, we might say in a generic design, south-facing, we do a big U shape, biggest trees in the back, smaller trees coming forward. It's catching the sun, it's doing this and that, but you have to observe and interact. I had to see where my sun was coming from. I couldn't make that shape, everything would be down there in the shade. So I picked that. And we talk about the edge effect. I'm not going too much about it, but if you think about a pond, the more edge it has, the more interaction between water, air, water, soil, the more bugs, the more length it gets. So by doing these edge effect around all these gills, we have more edge throughout the yard to work with. So then we went into what it is. This is about 3-4 years ago. This is what I would call the finished design at this point. Now we're kind of just holding it back at this point, managing it and keeping it there. Someone said, isn't that a lot of work? Because I hand dug all those swales, all those ponds. In the first 2 years, into the 3rd year, it really is getting all that design in, getting everything set. After that, you're just maintenance. You've given all that work away to everyone else, the building of soil, the fertilization, the taking care of bugs. I'm holding those plants back, I'm propagating those plants, I'm giving that stuff away, I'm creating compost, but generally the plantings are in. So we put that first lettuce seed in. You sit there and watch it for a week. Those first cotton leaves come out. And then it sits there for almost another week until it gets that second set of leaves. And then it really starts to happen fast. You got a head of lettuce before you know it. But those first few weeks, it's, come on. Well, it's the same thing with a fruit tree. We'll plant them too close together. You put that little twig in the ground, you're like, 12 feet, no way, I can plant closer than that. But also that feeling of 5 years for fruit, no way. 5 years goes by so fast, but after that 5 years, the 6th year, it's a little bigger. The 7th year, it's a little bigger. All that's just waiting at the start of the season. So these perennials that we use in our yard are such abundance created once we learn how to use those foods, process those foods, intertwine them into our diet. So at that point, we just had so many perennials mixed in. We're just holding it back. I don't know where I was going with this now. So this shows walking through. Our deck is above us. I can look down at all this from above. And our greenhouse is here. And I keep the chickens and ducks in there so we get that warmth. These trees sloppy in there. There's a sloppy greenhouse. I showed you the water from the compost. But that's zone 1. We also have zone 2 inside this fenced area. So zone 1 is the stuff we eat every day. Short-term annuals, we walk through, we harvest them, we see what's going on with bugs and insects. We don't have to worry about it much. We're seeing it every day as we walk by. Lower down in that garden is zone 2. Patterns of use area 2, but I still do some annuals in that inside the fence, but I'm going to do storage crops, corn, garlic, store dry beans, onions, stuff like that. But once I put them in there, I don't have to pay a lot of attention to them. I walk through once a week. Is there a fungus or an insect, something I have to take care of, but not that day where it's being overtaken. There's the view from the deck I was talking about, zone 1, zone 2, food forest around it. I think we're going to get into compost now. Fertility and creating no waste. I have a compost business. I talked about all those wood chips I get. I also work with 12 Baskets restaurant. So a restaurant for the homeless. It's free food. They produce a lot of waste because they're producing so much food. We turn that waste into surplus. I go get 10, 12 baskets of it, or buckets of it, once a week. I put that nitrogen with that carbon of those wood chips, and it creates a beautiful, fertile compost. I've migrated into Johnson Sioux. Is everyone familiar with Johnson Sioux? It's no one knows I'm going to talk about it then. It's the gold standard of compost. We're going to see here in a minute, I do thermophilic compost. So one of the first things we start reading about compost we're going to read is how fast I can make my compost in 28 days. Why do we do that in society? Yes, we can. I'm going to do good compost. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, it's great, but it's going to be incredibly bacterial dominant. If we get going too much on this, stop me. But when we get into fungus and we get into a compost or a garden bed, in permaculture we learn about succession. Succession is natural, and that's how these forest systems happen. It's that something doesn't stay a pasture. It starts out as pasture because of disturbance or something, and that's the first part of succession. All of a sudden, there's weeds and everything waiting, grass is waiting. They come up and they're repairing that soil from that disturbance in nature. Along with that comes up small locust trees, stuff like that, shrubs that are coming up for that second year. So first year is a bunch of perennial weeds that are repairing the soil. Next year is going to be smaller shrubs and trees that are doing that. Those locusts have what? You've ever seen a honey locust? Thorns that are that long on the side of it. So nothing can eat it, but they put out beautiful flowers, a lot of things that are edible, and they're repairing that soil, fixing nitrogen in that soil. That starts falling down and creates the next. So we go from a bacterial dominant, that's going to be anything that's a single year, it's an annual, is broken down by bacteria. So when I look at it on a microscope and I have annual plants and a compost that's being broken down quickly, there's going to be bacteria that break that down. Fungi, or we call the teeth of the forest. So I talked about arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi moving nutrients. There's also the decomposers in the soil. What breaks down woody products, trees, shrubs, anything that's woody is fungi. So bacteria break down the annual stuff, the soft stuff. Fungi break down the woody stuff. In our garden, we thought we only wanted to have bacteria like a field. Come to find out, we want about 50-50 in our soils. We want to have bacteria and we want to have fungi in there. The decomposers like that. And what that's doing is, well, the only plants that don't use it is the brassica family, pretty much. So 96% of plants, 93% of plants use that fungal connection. They want that fungal connection. Just the brassicas don't. So when we think of that, that's just about every plant that's going to be in our garden, other than our cabbages and kales and things like that. So to make a compost that's fungally dominant, it has to set for a while because there's spores. Am I going too deep into this? Is this all right? So a compost pile is going to sit there and it has to get hot. We want to get up to 142 is prime, 160 we're kind of getting the hot edge. 125 is the best diversity of microbes, but there's a few diseases and weed seeds that make it past that. So we want to get up to that 142. We hold it for about a week, we turn it. Think of it at a top, the bottom, and a middle. We make sure everything comes to the middle at least once. What that does is as that bacteria comes along, that's quick, it's hot, there's the mesophilic bacteria and the thermophilic bacteria. They come along, they've done the job, they've broken all that down, but the fungal spores that are in there started sporulating, putting out their filaments. We see those filaments of fungi and going through the pile. But a week in, we chewed all that up and broke them up and it stopped it again. A week later, we broke it up again. So what Johnson Sioux does, it makes a thermophilic compost, and I pile it up and get the temperature, but I have these tubes inside of it. I pile it up with these wood chips and these food scraps. I check the temperature. 2-3 days later, I take those tubes right out of there and it holds its shape. So it's allowing air into the pallet underneath and up through these holes, so I'm getting that oxygenation. Because that's what happens if we don't turn that pile. As it breaks down, all of a sudden becomes smaller matter. We've seen our compost piles get small, then become anaerobic inside them. They go from being aerobic, which we want, to being anaerobic, which is the pathogen of disease into our plants. So we don't want to have as much anaerobic in our compost pile if we can avoid it. This allows that air in, but we don't have to turn it, so we're not breaking those filaments anymore, so they just go out and colonize that whole complete pile. It takes a year. You set it, you forget it for a year, but then we're staying ahead of schedule. A year's best, a year better. But a year later, it's broken down, about 2/3 left, and it's the gold standard. When I get out, I'm a microscope geek, I get the microscope out, I'm just like, oh my God, what's going on? We're talking about a coral reef. It's like a coral reef should be, you know what I mean? There's all those different sized players within that soil system. There's just so much action going on. Cycling those nutrients, cycling those nutrients, cycling those nutrients. They get all that in, forest, bacterial, through old growth will be fungal. We're going in between. We want to compost that's a fungal. Weekend, I also have a simple compost that I use outside my greenhouse door. My greenhouse door is there. I open it up, the chicken and duck scraps come out. What I do is I leave this 5-gallon bucket outside my back door. It has a lid on it. We have inside of our kitchen sink a lidded little bin. Once or twice a day, once or twice a week, that will go out. Goes into that 5-gallon bucket outside. That has a lid on it. Once that's full, it's about a month to 6 weeks. I know, hey, it's time to clean up my chicken coop. So I clean out my chicken coop. I get any yard scraps I have, and I grab the food scraps, and that gives me a nice pile to make a beautiful compost out of. When I'm building a compost and I want it to get up to temperature, I have a thermometer. What I do is I use a 2/3 rule. If I was to say, oh, this piece of wood scraps has 400 to 1 carbon in it, this piece of straw has 150 to 1, this piece of, you'd get confused, you'd never be able to figure out what your pile actually has, you'd be weighing everything. So do a 2/3 rule. 2 browns to 1 green. Brown's going to be your carbon, your straw, your leaves, your wood chips, anything that's been for cardboard. Your food scraps and your garden scraps will be your greens, manure, urine. So I pile those up, 2 browns, 1 green, 2 browns, 1 green, 2 browns, 1 green in a pile. I make sure that's at least 3 foot tall, 3 foot wide, 3 foot deep. That'll give me enough energy in there to hold that temperature. I've been doing compost for so long now, about 15 years solid composting. Really, for the last 10 years, I've really just become a junkie for it. It's fascinating to me how it's not a range of temperatures. It's either about 128, 142, 160, somewhere in there. It has those amounts, and you know when you get it right. So you build your pile, you check it the next day, and it's already gone up to 130. You're like, oh, it's going to go to 160. I'm going to have to turn it before it gets too hot. If it takes 2 days to get to that 130, you know it's probably going to stop where it needs the next day and just hold it for a week. It's just the way it happens over for years. Let me say, the Cherokee didn't have thermometers. We don't have to do these things. We can do it by feel, but it's better to know exactly where you're at. Go ahead.
So you never have a problem with the bears getting your compost pile?
I get that a lot. When I didn't do it out front with all that food, I never had a problem with it because we have dogs. They do get into it out front, so now what I say is yes.
Okay.
What's it hurt? I mean, we were talking about it earlier that they're going to be there anyways. What we noticed in our neighborhood early on, two things. Our trash goes out once a month, half full. Our recycle goes out once a month, half full because of the permaculture lifestyle, because of the way we shop, what we eat. But also our trash never, ever has food in it, because food is not a waste. Once in a while there'll be a leftover container in there and the bear will get into it. But other than that, the bear never gets in our trash. It gets in the trash cans all around us. It gets in the trash cans around us, so would you rather have it get into your trash can or your compost pile? So it's going to be, they're going to be there no matter what. So what I say is the chickens are on top of my compost pile, and the chickens get on my compost pile and they break it down. I pile it up. Kind of the same thing with the bears. They dig through it. We're talking about is your organic pile? Someone had a horticulture pile. You had the horticulture pile. Talk about the bear getting into it. They just help us turn it. Yeah. Oh no, I got there. So compost. What do we do for time? Wood chips, we put wood chips everywhere. I use worms, I'm big into the worms, the red wigglers. They are helpers. The compost, when you look at compost, I teach us a class at AB Tech, and these are my students there. We had so much fun doing hands-on. I bring the class over 2 out of 3 days, we went to my house where they go to the classroom. But look at the smiles on, that is a compost day. We're out there, pardon my French, we're turning chicken shit. We're turning chicken shit and we're happy, we're enjoying it, it's fun. We're seeing the microbes in, the heat, we're learning about it, we're seeing how it breaks down. Johnson Sue's in the back. So I didn't finish that work. Somebody says, isn't a lot of work? So yeah, it was a lot of work in the first couple of years, but then it wasn't work. And I also did a video early on, as you're going to see in a minute. I walked around with a video camera and they said, isn't that a lot of work? Somebody will say it's a lot of work, but I grabbed a handful of blueberries. Works for me. I grabbed a handful of raspberries. Works for me. Handful of raspberries. Works for me. It is a lot of work, but what is work? Turning the compost is also work, but it's I can sit inside and watch TV and be on the internet and this and that, and then go to the gym and then come back and do that. Or I can turn a compost pile and I can be out in nature and listen to birds singing. I can be working in my yard doing this. It's what we call things. I'm running out of time, so I'm kind of hurrying now, but these are the swales. So you saw the wood chips out front. I put all these swales in, 25 individual swales. Each has a low spot, goes in the one below it. But look at the soil around it. That came out of that swale. I fill it full of wood chips every year, so that's the carbon. That carbon goes in there. The water comes in as they fill up. That brings the fungi in, it breaks it down, so it's starting to break down really quickly. When that happens, it calls all those insects in. So we're getting that insect frass in there, that insect waste is in there. What else does that do? Oh, the chickens and ducks, it supplements their diet. They get in there, scratch around, eat that insect. What are they going to do while they're there? They're going to defecate. Hey, there's more nitrogen. In 1 year's time, I'm digging that out and top dressing with what looks like a soil. Again, in 1 year's time, I'm going, wow, that was wood chips a year ago. Just fascinating. So we're composting in place. That shows the before and after. It's just fascinating. You can see the soil on top. We dug digging the swale out, dug the swale out, you can see the backside of it. And just how black and rich and how much is on there. Our whole yard's like that now. That shows inside of one of those, this is inside of our hugel there. We dug inside of that hugel maybe 7 years in. You can see a couple of them, and locust that was out front holding it up, but the whole hugel itself, it's just broken down to this gorgeous soil. This was 2 or 3 years in. I read about it and I taught. It acts like a sponge. It was in a drought like it is now. It was the middle of a summer day and I was changing a pathway, so I had to dig right straight through a hugel, and I got 12, 18 inches under, and there's a piece of pine. I could squeeze it with my finger, and in drought conditions, dry ground everywhere. You see the water oozing out. It's like, oh, ding, 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 ding. It really is just holding that water out of the sun, out of the soil for us. So then we started producing quite a bit of food. From there, we learned to eat that food, put it on different plates, different ways of producing it, stews, soups. But when it starts piling up like that, then you have to learn to put it away. Those are just autumn olive gummy berries, or autumn olive berries. We have the autumn olive that's invasive. We use one from One Green World Nursery, but it's a non-invasive type. So that's off of one tree, and we have 4 of them in the property. So even though we're on a half acre, the amount of abundance that you can get in that small half acre, we do the canning and the ferments and the pickling, and salsas and kimchis and drying things and fermenting. We do so many different ferments. We really love the kimchi and sauerkraut. Drinks, we use kombucha. We have our own kombucha, so having that many berries there, doing your fermentation of kombucha, we do a slow fermentation there with the SCOBY on top. And then our second fermentation, we put that into a bottle, we crush some berries in it, whatever berries happen to be going on that time of the year. And that gives the sugar for that second fermentation. It's just a wonderful, you can stop it where you want it, whatever flavor you want it at. Acorns. We have these massive nut trees around us, we don't think about it. We make a great flour. We add it with a white flour, makes a great bread. It doesn't rise as much, it's not as good, but it's not as good of a rise, but it's just a tasty.
You make flour out of acorns?
Yep.
Okay.
I have a mill, I grind it down, and then I add that to white flour. I use it by itself for making things like French toast batter, stuff like that, pancakes, stuff that doesn't need to rise much. We do a lot of perennials. We do ginger, taro, and turmeric. We grow those as annuals on our property. The taro's kind of taken over. I'm just going to go through these. Stop me if you want to. Stop me. We're supposed to show throughout the years. We get early on berries, just the handfuls. And we get a diversity, mulberries and elderberries and different types of raspberries and boysenberries and gooseberries and wineberries. So they start getting bigger handfuls and bigger bushes. And so then we have to process those as well. And what a treat it is to have that spread out through your yard. So it's not one area like we saw in the first one. I go harvest a whole bunch of blueberries, and that's kind of a job. It does get to the point, as we're going to see, where all of a sudden I do have to harvest that cherry tree or that gummy tree. We're working its way up to that. Some of those are ripe. A whole bunch of these are ripe. Some of these are ripe, so we get different colors every day. Whatever's in that bowl is going to be a whole bunch of this color, a little of this color, so it changes throughout, and you're just not having to process much, but it's also dragging you through your yard. Oh, to the blueberries, over here, you're seeing everything that's going on. You're getting pulled through your yard. You're listening. You're seeing. You're experiencing. But you're also seeing if there's any problems that are out there. And then use attention. More and more berries, just looking at it. I took out half the berry pictures in here, you're still going to see a whole bunch. We grow so many berries on a half acre, and I put away so many jams and jellies and fruit roll-ups. And what a great thing to have that left from last year, still eating it. From 3 years ago, I've got so many. The golden raspberries, we just love those. My wife says they taste like perfume. Perfume would taste. And just, again, the diversity. Every day we're just coming up with different, there's ducks in the pond. I didn't notice that. That pond is a propagation pond. You can see a white tube coming into that, and then it goes up along the greenhouse. It's got a bunch of holes in it there, so it waters that garden bed. It's coming over to a gutter. It goes up to a 4-inch pipe, down to a 2-inch pipe, holes along the front, and the overflow goes into that pond, catching and storing those energies. Anytime it rains, it waters that bed, while the rest have the swales catching that energy. The ducks are in there swimming around. They're pooping in there, putting that fertilizer in there. There's cracks in it. That's an old hot tub. That was in my aquaponics. That was up on the deck, and that was the sump pump area. When I moved the greenhouse back under the deck, it was taking up too much good south-facing area. Then taking that hot tub to the curb, I dropped it down on the ground. If you look in the design, what I did is that low summer sun was going to hit that hot tub. It was right next to the greenhouse, and it shines into the greenhouse. That high summer sun hit and missed the greenhouse. So I'm catching the story of that energy. It gets covered with pot plants in the summertime, so I don't have to worry about it, even if it was going to shine at the greenhouse. But this is the propagation pond. That's what took me to that. The ducks are normally not in it. So it grows a whole bunch of duckweed, water hyacinth, water lettuce, things like that. And I take 5-gallon buckets of that, and I put it in the ponds outside of the garden. That covers those ponds, keeps the daylight out of them, but it also supplements the diets of the chickens and ducks, catching that energy anywhere we can, supplementing their diets. More and more and more berries. More and more colorful mixes, the apples, the pears, the cherries. These are gummy berries here. Like I said, this is actually right there. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's a bird mark. So sometimes the ones that are picked up, the birds might peck at them. You're going to boil them up anyways. You still harvest a few of them. They didn't finish them. But that's the gummy berry that would come down and had the titmouses of the, what did I say they were? Cedar waxwings. They come out like the cedar waxwings were just hammer on, but I still get so much surplus out of it. So that's one gummy. Each of those gummies will have at least one in each guild. Part of that is propagation we'll talk about too. A lot of these, I don't think I put any slides in it, but at $35 a pop, So my whole front garden, when you guys come visit, you'll see it. The whole front garden, if you look at the back, the whole front's free, and it's just levels and layers of free, and it's only about 4 years old now, but it was free. I either bartered with plant cuttings that I had or things that I had with other people. I take cuttings off my property, we gift each other plants, and it happened so fast, and it's just abundance, but it was free, so that gift mentality. Does anyone know Charles Eisenstein? The gift economy, he really turned me on to that. It feels so good, you're gardeners, you know, to give away that surplus. Squash, we go around with their squash, and nobody wants to do anything with mushrooms. Once the mushrooms go off, my neighbor's like, oh no, here comes George with mushrooms.
How do your neighbors feel about your property now?
They really like it. They see for themselves what it does. They see the classes come over. The church next door planted berries along there. The kids know the ducks. They get to eat berries. They call the ducks and chickens over. I say this with no ego. I'm trying not to.
No.
It's a paradise. It's an absolute paradise to walk through, to be in.
I get it. We get it.
You're
but
gardeners, you know, yeah. But people that, at first it was a little, this is a little rough. Are you going to mow that? I don't know a lawnmower anymore. I don't have grass anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, zero grass on the property anymore. And I'm not against other places. We have children, but less and less. It's such a resource-intensive way to do things. So originally, the church next door, he became a good friend of mine. Roger became a good friend and do lots of work for him. I'm a carpenter over the years. But in the beginning, that's why I took the class, because he said, got a permit for that? I got no damn permit. I'm so mad. I was in depression because my brother, I had nothing I did really needed one. My tiny house, should have, things like that. Freedom is easier, but I'm a carpenter, I do everything within the restrictions.
So they kind of came around.
Yeah, I invite them. And once you show up with mushrooms and fruits and berries and berries, I'm a climate activist. I've drugged them all a few times here and there, but they get so mad about it. So it's been a little bit of a both, but we're good. I think it's good to have good open communication with people in here. This community, we're not all going to be alike. We got to get to know each other, good, bad, and different, and talk about those things and have those things. I'm a little too open. Some people aren't as open. We meet in the middle. But no, they really like it, I think. Even our front, we have a tea trellis, so we have difference in raspberries and blackberries, and our twice berry, we put on a tea trellis, so our biannual berries. So the first year the cane comes up and goes this year, the second year comes up and goes this year, and these start bearing fruit. It goes from being the veggie cane to the flora cane. Those become a mess, so I put those on a tea trellis all on the front road. So one year it comes up this way, and the next year it comes up this way. Well, these are giving berries. After those give berries, I chop all those off. These were the primate canes that become the flora cane the next year, and I put it the other way, so there's alternate sides. Somebody walks by, I tell them, oh, this year they're yours, next year they're mine. As you're walking by, you're picking berries, and there's strawberries along the front. It's along the road, but
Cool.
it invites people. These are cherries, just more, we're going to see a whole bunch of these. So we went from seeing the individual berries to now is hey, it's time to harvest that tree, it's time to harvest that tree. The gummies, the cherries, and all this is again on a half acre with a whole bunch of shade on our property. When I first started and I started studying, I need 6 hours for a tomato, I didn't even think I could grow tomatoes. By studying those light patterns and where things go, we grow a tremendous amount of food. If I was going out and I'm going to buy a property to grow food or do permit, I would have never picked this property. But being on it in that place, it just is able to show how much can be done when you identify those microclimates. Gooseberries. Ever familiar with gooseberries? Yeah. I grow a lot of gooseberries and currants and jossberries. And this is one of the ones I have a graph that's from the 16th century. I got it from the same person I got the gooseberry from. He's a French professor up the hill. I'd walk my dog and walk by and see all things in his yard. I was really just learning. He was teaching me a lot. He had a bunch of cuttings off his gooseberries at the ground. He picked them up and said, put those in the ground, they'll grow for it. And I was like, I'm no naive American. Whatever, no way. And I stuck them in buckets, put them back in the greenhouse, and that spring, oh my God, they're getting leaves. It was that easy. So talk about my front yard. I've got a greenhouse now. It's got a spray misting system set up on it, so I can do hardwood cuttings with no water in the wintertime. This time of year, we start getting that softwood, that new growth, and new softwood cuttings with the mister turned on. Later in the year, semi-hardwood cuttings. Most everything but the fruit trees and nut trees, most everything those understories, you find a way to propagate it pretty easily. And then we pass those on. I get away hundreds of trees every year of bushes and whatnot. These are more just the gummy berries, the picture of the abundance we get. That's doing the apple harvest, some more cherries, some tomatoes. When it comes in like that, we have to learn to process it. So learn to can. That's the pears we do, jams, jellies. I just put a bunch of these in here, the mulberries, the syrups. Any other jelly makers? It's either a nice thing of jelly or syrup. It's baking syrup. Didn't work out? No, it's syrup. Fruit roll-ups, new canning. That's a horrible picture of me. But we just put this in last year. I mean, there's that right there is our nut press.
That's what Jim was saying.
So we mill it, and then we press it here for getting oils or just ground nuts. We grind it and then press it to get oil, or just grind it to a different size with a mill on it. And dehydrator and freeze dryer and oilers and everything. So much fun. And learning what we're looking at here, and that picture is actually this here, where you get we make cider from the apples, cleaners from the grape or from the orange peels. Is anyone familiar with Korean natural farming?
Of what?
Korean natural farming.
Korean?
Yeah,
Korean?
it's really fascinating. Write down the name Chris Trump. I'm not stirring anybody up, but no relation. Chris Trump, he's just the authority on it. He had a lot of videos out before. He's done less now. He's out of Hawaii. But it's, I don't think there's much more in this slideshow. There's just slides I put in. I didn't make it in. We'll go through a couple of those. This is stuff out of my yard. And so Korean natural farming we can use. Should I stop here? You want to hear a little bit about it?
Yeah.
Okay. We're just taking weeds. I'm taking weeds and plants from my property, and I'm collecting those microbes, but also those minerals and nutrients. So I talk about those weeds and those enzymes and how I'm going to leave them out there. Taking those, what I do is I take by weight with brown sugar, I put them together. So it's either the really fast growing things in my yard, it can even be the worst weeds you have. You're just collecting those nutrients that they're accessing, and those weeds are really the best at getting those nutrients out of the soil and microbes. Nutrients and minerals out of the soil. So for green growth, for vegetation, I do that. For fruiting and flowering, I do the flowers. So it's called FJ, fermented fruit juice, and FPJ, fermented plant juice. I take brown sugar, equal weight, I put them together. It's not turning into a syrup and putting them in liquid and fermenting like we would do normally. What it's doing is that brown sugar dries that material out and makes all those microbes go into hibernation. They put like a shell around their body and go into a dormant state, but it's taking all those nutrients and getting those out of it and getting into that liquid. So then I use that brown sugar, and I use it 1,000 to 1. And it really is one of those things, and I've been using it a few years now. In the first year, you're like, 1,000 to 1, what does this really do? And I'm going to be honest, a little hard man like I can be. First year, I was like, if 1,000 to 1 good, 500 to 1's better. I bet 20 to 1's even better. I sprayed it all over my trees, walked through my yard so happy, and then a couple days later saw some black spots. That wasn't from that. A couple days later, some more black spots. That wasn't from that. Leaves started falling off. Oh, what did I do? 1,000 to 1. A trench, you can use it 500 to 1 or less, but it's a tiny little amount. I don't know if I show it in here. So there it is when it's being mixed. And as it's breaking down, that brown sugar all turns into a syrup. This here is lactic acid bacteria. We're going to talk about those. Are just one of our favorite guys out there, rod bacteria. But they're so wonderful for disease control, pest control, to make for sprays out of. But I'm also getting a cheese out of it. So I'm trying to hurry this, we're out of time. But I take rice. I wash my rice like we all normally would. I take that water and I save it. I set that on the counter with a paper towel over it. For first day I smell that. Second, third day it'll have a lightly sweet smell. It stinks, start over, do it again. Once there's that sweet smell, I've colonized that bacteria in there. That's that lactic acid bacteria, that rice wash water, because they were all over that rice. So then I take them, 1 part of that to 10 parts milk, I mix them together, and it's just like making cheese curd. All of a sudden it goes in, and it's curling up. I'm getting that curd on the top. I remove that. What's left behind is just a really dense amount of that lactic acid bacteria that I use 1,000 to 1. That I use in combination. The other ones I'm using for nutrient. This I'm using to get those bacteria out there, colonize all of it. If it's got these beneficial bacteria all over those leaves, those stomata, it doesn't allow those bad guys into it. So we're covering with just a wonderful layer, so we're just protecting it, getting rid of the guys over there. I'm not going to go too much into, hey, my bread, cherries. We do so much pizza. I was going to say, we do so much pizza and bread now. I got an outdoor oven. I was asked to speak last year at Organic Grower School, clean on the things that worked for us and didn't work for us. And it was a hellish experience for so many people, and I'm not putting it down because we did everything we could. Where we were out of water and food for so long, without power and water. We were asked to speak because we've been doing this for years, kind of for these kind of situations. Prepping, we weren't prepping, we're just doing permaculture, changing our life, but and I'm not taking away how horrible it was for people. We actually kind of enjoyed it. It was later in the year, we had so much food put away, we learned to produce so much of our own food. We have a nice grill and a pizza oven on the deck and a garden down below, ponds full of water for flushing our toilets. We see everybody walking by with 5-gallon buckets of water, one for flushing the toilet, one for drinking. And we actually, things quieted down. It got real quiet in town. We just kind of, to a degree, enjoyed that time because we learned some of these things. There's my designs up here. Prairie Class comes over, I put them on the wall. I think that's about all there is. I think the rest of these are. Making your own soil. Someone was talking about it. Making your own soil. I make my own soils. I go in too long. Does anybody want to stop? Should we stop here?
No, go on.
Go on.
Yeah.
If anyone needs to go and you get up and go, I'll stop after this. But making your own soil, we can make a wonderful soil if we're doing potted plants, because it's too much for your whole property, but just by taking 3 parts: compost, aeration, and they say peat moss. I don't use peat or cocoa coir. I actually use leaf mold instead. Equal parts, 33%, 33%, 33%. That's toning down the compost with that organic matter. The aeration can be stones. It can be rice hulls, different things for aeration. You can use perlite or stuff like that. I don't tend to use that because it's close to the top. But mixing those 3 things together, and then just using these bone meals and these ocean products and guanos in small amounts mixed into there, and you put it together, so you're taking those microbes in the compost, and those microbes are feeding on these meals and releasing that, so it's a living soil. It's living with bacteria. It's just incredible. I've had soil that I haven't disturbed in years now, and it just does so well. I put all that nutrient back into it, drop the organic matter, and do the top dressing compost on it. But better than anything you can buy in the soil. So just look up living soil. I think that's it. Some more produce. That's A-frame level. You can look up A-frame level. Use that to make our swales, our dried fruit, dried berries. All that stuff. That's all. Any questions at the end about permaculture or food forest? Or?
I'm wondering your opinion of biochar.
Love it. I almost put it in here. I sell it. I have a small farmer's market. I do worm castings to biochar. I take all my prunings off my fruit trees. We have so many prunings at this stage. So I take all those prunings, I pile them up, and I make a biochar. I use it a couple different ways: a barrel and a hole in the ground. And being a soil geek, look under the microscope. It's just fascinating. If you're not familiar with biochar, it's we take this wood and we burn it down to it's just like charcoal, but it's done at a high heat, low oxygen environment. And then I put it out with water really quickly. So what it does when it's real hot like that, it turns to steam and it bubbles and creates this really porous material. So think of just the old chocolate bar, whatever, had the pores and stuff. And that's what it looks like inside. It's just really porous on a microscopic scale. The numbers I've heard is if you take a gram, it's about the size of your fingernail, and broke that out flat with all the pores that are in there, inside of a balloon is going to be a lot of surface area. So we took all those pores, opened them up. It's going to be the size of a tennis court on your fingernail. So that's area to colonize with all those beneficial bacteria. I'll do real quick my process. Because what we do is we take this char, we make this char. At that point, if you put it in your soil, it's ready to go. It's ready to be charged and inoculated. If you put it in your soil, it's going to take all that nutrient, suck it in for a long time until it's full, and then it's able to give it back when it needs, suck it back when it needs. But at first, it's going to really not be good. So we inoculate it, we charge it. What I do first is I put it in a barrel. I take it, I crunch it all up after I made it into smaller pieces. I put it in a barrel, and I put it in water. That makes it not hydrophobic anymore, so it allows the water to. What I do during that part is I charge it. So there's charging and inoculating should be 2 separate things. You can do them at the same time. At Phat Ninja Food Farm, we do it the right way in a separate process. So in that water, I put all these different nutrients that we saw, those minerals, those neem seeds, those crustaceans, and I let it soak in that. It sucks all that in for a few days, up to 2 weeks, until it's not soaking, until it's not floating anymore. I take it out of the water, and then I bury it in worm castings with a little bit of water, and I do that for a couple days. So we've put the minerals and nutrients in there, we've charged it, and then we're inoculating it with the microbes after that, and then it's just this incredibly rich, diverse, microbial, nutritionally dense substance. It takes just a sprinkle. Every time I put a plant in, I put a sprinkle in, or on the top of a plant, just a sprinkle, and it's just a great product to use. So biochar is another great thing to look into. Any other questions?
Do you coexist with poison ivy, honeysuckle,
There's
English
last
ivy?
week's. I used to be horrible about it. I get it so bad. I think I get it so much now that I kind of just always have a little bit here and there. This is the best time of year to get rid of it if you're familiar with it. Right now, it puts out those red leaves. You just see it stick out so plain. Cover yourself up and go and start ripping it out. It's a type 1 weed, definitely. Figure it out just as fast as I can. It shows up. We have so many untouched areas.
And then what do you do, what do you do with the leaves and the plants after you rip it out?
Sounds horrible. I'm kind of lazy, but I hang it on the nearest fence or tree next to me until it dries out.
Okay.
And I forget about it. So it dies and dries out and just falls back down, and then as long as it's dried out. If I throw it in the ground, it might reroot itself, so I hang it on the fence or a tree branch or something, just kind of throw it into it and let it die.
Gotcha.
You can compost it, but then you have the worry of rooting in the compost pile.
Do you compost after it's dried?
I don't, it just falls down to the ground and compost in place, yeah.
But once
It'd
it
be a
dries
good idea,
out
though.
and kills it, then it's like inert.
I believe so, but I gotta be honest, I wouldn't touch my body with it. I get it so easy. I think it's probably still got a little bit of oil somewhere deep in it, you find it.
Gotcha.
I don't know if it's completely inert.
What kind of methods do you kind of follow when building your swales? Because is it like a topographic kind of line that you would follow on the?
Yeah, so the A-frame level, those swales exactly. If we look throughout there, would have been, look at it, not one of my pathways was a straight line. Now, what I did, I used what's called an A-frame level. I'm a contractor, I have laser levels and transits, but it's even faster to use this simple device. It's 3 pieces of wood making an A. I'll explain how I use it. Originally in classes I show the most simple way. If you had nothing else, you can put 3 pieces of wood together, hang a string and put a weight on the bottom of it. Set that on the ground, you're not gonna be completely level. Let that string hang through that cross piece, mark where it was across that. Flip the legs 180 degrees, let it stop swinging, mark where it crosses it. Halfway between those 2 marks is level. Now you know where level is. You need to use that with nothing else but that to find level on your property. I do the same thing, but I put a level on there. So I pick where I want them. Where it starts to get steep, I'll do a swale on top of that. And I'll do a swale where it flattens out again, and I'll do smaller swales in between. So that's what my yard is. Before that water goes in, I'll do a larger swale, one at the bottom. So I take that A-frame level and I use something to mark where it sits. I get it level and mark each leg. I hold that leg, holding it level. As soon as I hold it until it hits, I'm holding it level, as soon as it hits the ground again, wherever it hits, I mark that. And I keep swinging that leg across my property. And also you'll have this path across your property that does this. Like a contour map would be, but I think everybody does the same thing. I've got old pictures where I dug one shovel full out all the way across it because you're like, there's just no way. That can't be that easy. You dig it out, you put the hose in, and you're like, oh, the whole thing fills up just like it should. So then from there, this is kind of a funny story. Hindsight's 2020. I had this bottom. I did layer gardening like I showed in the beginning. Had all these beautiful soils I built up over 2-3 years. Started doing these hoogles. I was like, great, I'm going to do these swales all across my property, put the swales in. I'm going to take all this tree branch material and put it up there and take the soil and top it off with it. So I put the swales in, put the tree material in there, realized how much of it was. Shoot, I should have used my truck. Well, the whole yard was open. I couldn't get my truck down there anymore. Well, I'll put it in 5-gallon buckets. So 2 5-gallon buckets at a time. I walk all the way up the hill, dump it on top of the debris, and just watch it disappear down the leaves. Like, this is one of those jobs that's just going to be never ending. So I'm doing them small in the beginning. They were just mounds, but laying them out with the A-frame level, getting that water to be caught, so it has that natural layer to natural line to it. It has a natural feel to it, but it's also just what the water wants to do. So if we went straight across that, we have let's say there's a mound in our yard like that, and we went straight through that, and it's perfectly on contour there and there. When we get rid of all that dirt, there's going to be this steep drop into it. So then we deal with erosions and all those problems. Other places not going to be as full. So by following those contour lines, we get nice even swales. Just such a wonderful feel, and it kind of designs your property for you from there. So that'd be one of those observe and interact in the swale system. Just kind of look where they're going to be, where you're going to want them in there, and dig the first few and go from there. And as far as building the soil, get all that organic matter you can. If you see people throwing things out, grow a bunch of comfrey, food scraps. Chickens are great to have with that straw bedding we use. Wood chips get it in there. It's just amazing how fast that breaks down inside of that soil. And if you think you got too much wood in there, just put a little extra compost on top, cover with compost on top. And you're off to the races quick.
In the Korean farming, the fermented plant juice, or the FFJ or the FPJ, it was 1,000 to 1 H2O that you spray on everything?
Yep.
Okay.
So it's per gallon, it's like less than a teaspoon or a teaspoon and a half. I can't remember the exact measurement. It's just a tiny, tiny little bit.
Okay.
But it's amazing how well it works. But I'm usually not doing just one. I'm usually doing, there's the FPJ, the FFJ. There was the, drawing a blank now. The lactic acid bacteria, the lactic acid bacteria. Then there's also, I take my eggshells, and I bake those in the oven to get rid of any of the insides that are on them, anything other than the eggshell on there. I take those, I crunch them up, and I put them in a vinegar, and it just starts fizzing like crazy. After 3 days, that stops, and you've got a water-soluble calcium. So for the calcium part, for blossom enteral, things like that. So what I do is I do a mix of all those different things. So it's 1,000 to 1, but I'm doing a bunch of different things in there. The FPJ, the FFJ, the lactic acid bacteria, the calcium extract. FFA is a fish and brown sugar, and then you're doing amino acids, you get amino acids out of it. There's all these different things taking these waste products. We ferment them or break them down in a caustic and acid material, and it gives that nutrient back.
Okay.
And it's as Chris Trump says, it's Korean natural farming. In Korea, they just call it natural farming. It's just natural farming. They've been doing it for years. They've really got it dialed in. It's fascinating to see it work. It's like compost was for me. And we, Elaine Ingham that I talked about, she's, bless her heart, she brought this whole soil food web to us, an understanding of it, and nurture process, all that, but she was very against anaerobic. Everything had to be, and it's true, most of it's aerobic out there, but those trees are so fascinating when I talk about that process. If a tree needs to have something, we see the mineral, we see the nutrient available table while on the acidity chart, things are available somewhere in that, and 7's got a little bit of everything in there available. If that tree needs something in an acidic area, it doesn't have a acidic or anaerobic environment spot in its roots, it'll put out enzymes and change just a small area into what it needs, where that nutrient is. There's more intelligence in that root system than we can ever wrap our heads around. It's the more we learn, we don't know. Anything else? Well, thank you very much. I got through the nerves, we got through it. Appreciate it.